Hey, does everyone realize it was today, 1 year ago, we were all in Ohio?
Yes.
Oh, all of us that were there.
Well, for some value of all.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder if we'll get back there next year. So let's see who we got here. Hey, Ken and Val, how you going?
Yeah.
Good, doing good.
Karen, how you doing? First
Hey.
time joining us?
Yep, first time.
First time. Hey, George, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Mav.
Yep. Ira, you're muted, but I'm listening intently. There he is.
I'm
Hey,
muted
Ira.
because not here.
How's the smoke? How's the smoke there in California?
I don't live out by the smoke.
You don't even get it, well, what do they used to call it? Passive smoke from miles away?
But I don't leave the house. In fact, the only times I actually leave the house is to mail out TRS-80.
Me too. I've had 3 months. I've not gone 500 meters from my house for the last 3 months. It's
Right.
yeah, it's like being in jail.
I live in the Bay Area, and well, today is good. The last week has been good, but before last week it was horrible, just unbelievable. And there was one day where we had like this orange sky. It looked like a scene from Blade Runner, just unbelievable.
Some people pay good money for that.
Yeah, it's
True. The anyone here from Oregon?
We're from Washington. It was bad here too.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
My folks are in
I'm
Oregon.
get my mic set up. We even got some of the smoke haze here in Maryland.
Yeah.
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 yeah. In Oroville, we have not only the smoke, but we have the fire as well. It came within about a half a mile of the house.
Ooh,
Oh.
Geez, that's a bit too close for comfort.
that's too close.
Yeah.
At night here in New Mexico at sunset, right as the moon's going down, actually, it's a blood red moon.
Yeah.
On the horizon.
I see P. Burrell has joined us. I know he's in Oregon. How's it there? Does it stop burning, Pete? Paul?
Yeah, it's quit burning. Hold on, Ian. I'm trying to get my setup here. I'm on my laptop. I'll be right back.
Okay. Hey, Mike Yetzko, how you going?
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, there he is down in there. Yeah.
I figured I'd check it out. Peter's been bugging me to come to this, so I figured I'd check her out.
Yeah.
Nice to hear you.
All right, so we're going to get started. I think I did all the housekeeping here. So welcome to another live show, TRS-80 Trash Talk. This is our 7th live show. Every time I am planning and scheduling the show, I always make a mistake on the number because I can't believe we've actually had 7 at this point. So really cool.
This is really number 6.
Are you trying to screw with me?
Mav numbers from 0, so you know.
That's right.
So you all know we had to cancel Tandy Assembly this year. Oh, so sorry. It's the wonderful event we all love to go to and spend a few days geeking out, enjoying our TRS-80 and our TRS-80 friends, more importantly. But of course,
a few days is good. It's the travel that's the that's the big problem.
Yeah.
Even for you, Pete.
Oh, Dusty's asking me. Dusty wants the passcode here. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pete, the link that is posted on your Trash Talk homepage, if you click on that one, it requires a password, but the link you paste into Discord, that works.
I didn't have to put a password in.
Okay, well, I'll just respond to the emails as they come in. I can never get it right. Okay. All right, so in lieu of Tandy Assembly, we're going to have a couple of sessions today. The first one is going to be run by, everyone knows Arno Puder and Andrew Quinn. They have a couple of new, really exciting TRS-80 accessories that they would like to present to us. So in the spirit of a Tandy Assembly presentation, please welcome the guys to give a presentation to all of you. Arno?
Thanks, Pete. Well, hello, everyone. As Mav mentioned, we should be in Ohio. Well, actually, for this year, it was scheduled a little bit later. But last year at this time, we were in Ohio, and it would definitely be a better venue than doing this via Zoom here. So we're going to present a couple of projects, and my co-conspirator, Andrew Quinn, he's down under in New Zealand. Hey, Andrew, I see you in the center of my screen. And we're going to be talking about two projects. And I'm going to start with trs-IO. And Andrew is then later going to talk about Pocketress, another project we've been working on. And let me see, did you enable screen sharing? Yes. Let me see if I can. Some people know that I'm in the education business, and I guess I cannot just do a talk without slides. So it's kind of like a professional hazard, and I just need slides to guide me through what I want to talk about. So welcome again to this virtual presentation here. Two topics we're going to talk about. Can everyone see my shared screen here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. So first I'm going to talk about TRS-IO for the Model 1, and then later we're going to talk about Pocketress. And just maybe a little recap on TRS-IO. I actually demoed that last year at Tandy Assembly for those of you who were there. And TRS-IO evolved from something I presented 2 years ago at Tandy Assembly, basically a little card that gave you access to what we call the RetroStore. I'm going to demo that later as well, but then Pete had the ingenious idea on why don't you morph the RetroStore card into something more generic, basically giving a TRS-80 internet access, generic internet access. And then that was the starting point of TRS-IO. So TRS-IO is powered by a little microcontroller. I'll talk about a bit in a second. But this little microcontroller has a Wi-Fi module integrated. So you can actually connect it to Wi-Fi, and this is what gives it online capability. The idea is that then from your TRS-80, you have a little protocol that enables you to open TCP sockets to any internet server. But I also integrated FRET functionality. So, you know, FRET is storing disk images on an SD card, and you have to, the FRET card has an SD card slot. Well, since TRS-IO uses a microcontroller with Wi-Fi capability, what actually TRS-IO does, it mounts a network share, an SMB network share, and that is where you have to put your hard disk images. It has a bunch of APIs. So Pete contributed what he called trs-nic, which is basically like a low-level socket I/O that you can do from a TRS-80. Then I added trs-fs, basically POSIX file system API that allows you to open, read, and write files. And yeah, I already mentioned that it is fully compatible with FRET. It's open source. On the bottom, there's a link to my GitHub repository. I'm going to share the slides with Pete later on, so you can add it to the show notes in case you want to take a look at this. Now, this what I demoed last year at Tandy Assembly for the Model 3. So I live in the Bay Area, and I got hold of a Model 3, and it was actually Tim Halloran last year who said, well, why don't you do this also for the Model 1? And I told him, well, I don't have a Model 1. So I have to give a huge shout out to Tim. He actually sent me a Model 1 from Pittsburgh to San Francisco, so I could then work on a port of TRS-IO for the Model 1, and that is what I'm going to demo. Just letting you guys know, I have a very small laptop screen. I cannot see the chat things that you do there. If there's a question, maybe someone can just quickly shout out, or if you have any questions along the way, just feel free to just interrupt me here. Let me just mention this microcontroller because I'm really fascinated by this ESP microcontroller from Shanghai company called Espressif, and it's just this amazing little microcontroller that has built-in Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, a dual core, runs at 240 megahertz. It has built-in 4 megabyte of flash, half a megabyte of SRAM, quite a few GPIO pins, a lot of interfaces, SPI, I2C, I2S, like everything that it's kind of like a kitchen sink of everything that you want in a microcontroller. The one that I use for TRS-IO is actually a development board, and you can see the. And is my screen covering up the gallery thing here? I don't know. So you can see a screenshot of the like a picture of the module that I'm using for TRS-IO, and we actually using something different for Pocketress, but Andrew is going to cover that later. So here's a close-up view on the board. So this is the TRS-IO board for the Model 3. The first thing I want to mention is that it's just one code base. So if you go to GitHub, there's just one repository, one code base for both the Model 3 and the Model 1. However, the PCBs, the boards, are quite a bit different, and that has to do with a few little details. The Model 3 has a 50-pin connector. The Model 1 has only a 40-pin connector. The Model 1 typically does not have a built-in RAM, only 16 kilobyte of RAM. So I also included a 32 kilobyte SRAM chip. But otherwise, it's completely compatible with the TRS-IO for the Model 3. I support auto boot, so you can like automatically boot into FreHD menu. I'll talk about that also a little bit later. And I also added the heartbeat interrupt for the Model 1, so that also the timer actually works. Just to maybe talk about the components. So here's the 40-pin I/O connector that connects to your Model 1. Here's the 32 kilobyte SRAM module that I added on the board. So there are a total of 4 octal buffers. I use the 245 variants that can also do level shifting. So actually the one on the top left is not used as a buffer. Technically it's used for level shifting, but the 3 on the side are for the 16 address lines, A0 to A15, and then the 8 data bits. And then there are 2 gulls, and I don't want to go into details of why I use 2 gulls here. But basically, since I'm also routing the 16 address lines for scanning for certain address patterns, and I'll talk about that later a little bit. I need 2 gulls. Actually, I didn't manage to fit it all into one. And last but not least, here there's a port expander, MCP23S17. The ESP on the bottom left doesn't have enough GPIO pins to scan for 8 bits data bus and 16 bits address bus plus a bunch of control lines. So I'm using a port expander here to bit bang the address. And actually, the 16 address bits are bit banged to this port expander to the ESP. So these are the components of the TRS-IO cards. And so now I want to do what I tell my students never to do, a live demo, because these are bound to fail.
Arno, you never told me that when you signed me up for the Pocketress live demo.
I'm sorry, Andrew. Well, so here's the web page that gets served from the ESP, and you use a web form to configure it. So you can actually see the credentials of my Wi-Fi, SSID, and credentials of my Wi-Fi password. You can configure a time zone. And that's also one difference to the FreHD card. FreHD has a little battery on it that keeps the time, and you have to set the time manually. Since I can go online with TRS-IO, actually I'm using NTP to sync the time from the internet, but then you have to tell TRS-IO in which time zone you are. So here's then the time zone that I'm here in San Francisco. And last but not least, you can see the credentials for the SMB share. No, No, I'm not getting bombed here, and I'm behind a firewall. This should be fine. So, so here are the credentials of the SMB share. So this is like a local IP address of my Synology drive, and that is where I keep my my hard disk images. So I'm going to stop sharing. And what you may want to do now is, so you can see my my Model 1 here. I'm holding my hand in here right now. So what you can do is you can pin this window, and then it will kind of blow up, and you can zoom in. You can probably then see better what's happening on the screen here. So hover your mouse over the 3 dots menu, and you can pin the video, and then we'll give you like a full screen view of what I'm doing here now for the demo. I'm turning on the screen. I'm plugging in the card. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the Model 1, and with the brake key held down. So I'm going to go into the regular basic prompt here. And the first thing I'm going to do, I don't know if it's big enough that you can actually read what is showing on the screen here, but I'll just type print mem to show it has 48K of memory. So that is here the SRAM in action, just giving the Model 1 48 kilobytes. So now I'm hitting the reset button of the Model 1. And now you see the familiar FRET boot menu. And I'm going to boot into new DOS here. So the disk image is now being loaded from the SMB share. And that takes a little bit long here. So I guess the SMB share had to fire up. So this disk image now got served from my Synology in the basement. And pay attention to the date and the time. So this is my local time and date here in San Francisco. And that was pulled by the NTP daemon running on the ESP. So I did not have to configure the time. And just also to demo the heartbeat interrupt. So if I type time, you can see that the clock advanced actually. So it's a few seconds later than what the boot time is showing here. So you can do the usual thing here. So you can type dir to see the disk image, the directory. And I think I'm having some network issues here. You see, that's why I'm telling my students never to do a live demo. I have, yeah, my Synology is in the basement, so I think that's disrupting a little bit. So the first thing I want to do is I want to call basic, and I want to load a little program that actually was written by Pete, it's a Whois client. So, you know, Whois is an internet service where you can find out details about a server. And I can type list, it just will flash by. You cannot read it, doesn't really matter, but it's basically a little basic program that communicates with TRS-IO, and it's using a low-level socket API to open a socket connection to a Whois server. And when I run it, it is going to ask for a domain name. Let me use Pete's domain here. And then you will see what you see scrolling over the screen is now basically the response from the Whois server on the internet. And it's printing out the Whois entry on the Model 1 screen now. And that is just using a regular socket API. So I'm creating a socket, binding it to an IP address, opening it, sending the domain name that you want to have information for, and then printing out the data here. And because it's written in BASIC, that is why it's so slow. I can load another demo. The second demo is to demonstrate the file system I/O. So there's a little basic program called cat/bash, and it's basically like the Unix command cat, where you can print out the contents of a file. So this is also using similar API. It's now a POSIX API for opening a file, and that file resides on the SMB share. So when I run this here, I can enter the file name, and I can now enter the file name of whois.bas. And now basically it's printing out on the console the content of the basic file that I was just showing you earlier, the Whois example that actually Pete wrote. And it's not very sharp. I apologize for that, but you know, it's difficult to read anyways. So let's just go to the end here. So that just shows the low-level API that you can use. You're using the port 31 of the expansion port interface to communicate with TRS-IO, and that allows you to open sockets to the internet and to open files that are located on the SMB share. Okay, I'm going back to new DOS here. So CMDS, I'm going back to new DOS. And what I can do now is I can use import, export to also then import files that are on the SMB share onto the hard disk image. So I can say import roundup.cmd. Oops, I got the wrong import to roundup.cmd. So I copied Pete's latest game to my SMB share. And now I'm using import to copy that from the SMB share into the disk image file of new DOS. And now I can call roundup. So here's then Pete's little game that he wrote, second game. So I will not play here. I'm going to hit reset to reset my Model 1.
Oh, you're not going to play?
Hmm?
You're not going to play it?
I will play something else in a second. So I'm back in new DOS. You can see it's much faster now that my SMB share is up and running, the server is up and running. Let me type dir to show you the content. You can actually see in the lower left here, that's the CMD that I just imported from the SMB share. For the last part of the demo, I want to launch the RetroStore client. And actually, for those of you who came since the first Tandy Assembly, you know that that was what we demoed the first year of Tandy Assembly, what we call the RetroStore. It's basically an app store for retro games that we keep in the cloud. And you can go to retrostore.org, but I've also written a native client that basically gives you a browsing interface to the remote RetroStore. And so I can now hit enter here. I can then basically call up all the applications, all the games that we are hosting, the CMD files for which I've all gotten permissions. Just I should also mention this. The CMD files are all hosted on the RetroStore, and I can now basically browse. And I want to pick a different one here. You hit enter, you get some metadata here. You can see the author, publishing date, some little blurb. And if you hit enter again, then the CMD is downloaded from the RetroStore again via the Wi-Fi interface, and then you can then play a game. So, and that is, of course, you know, Pete's breakdown game that he wrote. Okay, I'm not very good at that. That's the end of the demo. And let me just do one more slide or two more slides, and then I am going to hand over to Andrew. So you should see my slides. So here is, I wanted to explain the auto boot feature. And also another big shout out to George, who helped me a great deal to understand some details of the Model 1. Actually, George sent me some disassembled Z80 code that his brother Peter reverse engineered. That's the boot code in the Model 1 ROM that reads from the floppy disk. And you can see it's memory mapped I/O. So I condense it to a little bit. You can see that here you write to an address 37E1. You write a 1 to select drive 0. And then you have another memory mapped I/O to then start reading data in a loop. And I thought, well, okay, why not have the ESP respond to these memory I/O requests? I mean, that's after all what I'm doing for in and out commands. Why not just simply all do the same thing for memory access? And this worked beautifully for peeking, reading from addresses. So I could intercept whenever the Z80 is reading from RAM, I was able to intercept that. But for some reason, I had issues with poking. Whenever the Z80 was writing to memory, I could not successfully intercept that. And I wanted to mention, so all these extension cards, what they do is, there's some external microcontroller, they see that they're being addressed, and then what they do is they assert the wait line on the Z80 to give them a little bit more time to do whatever they have to do. That's a common thing. The Fred card is also doing this, and all the IO cards, they do that. They see that they're being addressed, and then they assert the wait line. The Z80 goes into a little wait loop, and then that gives the microcontroller a little bit more time to do what it needs to do. And actually, initially, I thought I don't have to add an external SRAM card. I could just simply use the ESP as external RAM. But like I said, I had some issues intercepting poke commands from the Z80. And when I dug a little bit deeper, I dug into the Z80 timing of the IO bus. And you can see like typical timings on the top. Here is the clock. Here's the address line. And then here you can see memory request when the Z80 requests something. And then here you have the read and write line that tell you if the Z80 wants to read or write, peek or poke. Now, the T2 cycle here, that is where you can raise the wait line of the Z80, where you can tell the Z80, okay, hold on, give me a little bit more time. And when I deassert the wait line, then you can move on. So T2 is where the Z80 is scanning for this wait line here. And on the left here, you can see the read cycle, and you can see what happens is memory request and the read request go down in T1. So the microcontroller can see this, and it can very quickly assert the wait line here. So then the Z80 gives me enough time to serve this read request. But the one thing I wanted to point out, and I don't know why, but when for a write cycle, the write line here goes also down during T2, which means when the microcontroller asserts the wait line, it's too late. When I see that the Z80 is trying to write data, by the time I assert the wait line here, it is too late. So basically, the bottom line is it is impossible to use a microcontroller to intercept a write cycle. So going back to my auto boot here is basically I'm just ignoring all the writes here. I mean, I know what the ROM is doing here. I know that when the Model 1 is booting up, it is selecting drive 0. I know it is trying to read sector 0. So I'm only focusing on the reads, and I'm just basically serving back the boot sector, and that is then the Fred boot sector, that then the boot menu. But it's kind of like a little interesting technical detail here. I don't know why the Z80 is asserting the write pin one cycle later than for reading. But that caused me some headaches, and it took me some time to understand why I cannot intercept write cycles here. Last slide, just to show you the basic program that shows how to use the file system API and how to open sockets. It's the same idea. It always is using, oops, there's actually should be a new line here. So you're basically using port 31 to send commands to trs-IO, and then you can write out, like for an open command, you can use a for loop to then just write out character by character the file name or the host name that you want to access. And that is basically how you can use port 31 to talk to trs-IO. And that comes to the end of my part. And if there are any quick questions, I can answer them before I hand over to Andrew.
Yeah, Arno, quick question for you. Why didn't you use memory request rather than write for your poke for latching the wait? If you noticed in the timing diagram, it comes at the first cycle, not the second?
Because I think, well, for one, the memory request is also done for, I think, DRAM refresh, so it would be more difficult to distinguish what the Z80 is doing. But I think there was another problem. I think the memory request is actually not being sent out to the I/O port. If I remember correctly, let me just quickly open the web page here, but I believe the memory request from the Z80 is not being put out on the expansion interface. Let me just open up.
Yeah, if you have M1 and memory request, you can decode out the refresh cycles. Something to consider down the road if it's there.
Let me just quickly share my screen again. So here's a web page that shows the so they don't put the memory request out on the I/O bus, so it's not accessible. And again, by the time I see the write here, which is somewhere, where is it? Yeah, by the time I see the write, it is just simply too late. And if you carefully look at the pins here, the memory request is not being put out on the I/O bus. So that's why, at least, I was not able to use a memory request for this.
Yeah, I had forgotten that they brought RAS and CAS apart, and that's how they differentiated the memory request. Maybe you can do something different there.
Yeah, if you have any ideas on how to do that, then let me know.
I'll think about it, and I'll send you a note if I can figure out something.
Thanks. Okay, and with that, I'm going to hand over to my co-conspirator, Andrew, who just finished his breakfast in New Zealand.
Thanks, Arno.
Thanks, Arno.
Thank you.
So hopefully, if the technology is working, Arno's slides have swapped to the further section of Arno's slides, and everybody can see that. So good morning, afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. I'm Andrew Quinn, so I've sort of been involved with the TRS-80 stuff for a while. Haven't managed to get to Tandy Assembly yet, despite Mav nagging me endlessly to do it. So maybe next year. So what we're going to talk about for this next section is another project called Pocketress. So if you think Arno hasn't been busy enough in doing the Model 1 TRS-IO, he's, maybe it's being an academic, you got to have 100 things on the go at once. And Pocketress was another thing that he had in his back pocket. He's also quite good at finding people and getting them enthused about interesting projects. And I'm a bit of a sucker for that kind of stuff. So we've been working pretty much through this year on the Pocketress project, taking what was at the beginning of the year, some work Arno had done to get basic emulation of a Model 3 running on his favorite ESP32 microcontroller and connecting to a PS2 keyboard and a VGA monitor, and really taking that through to the point where we now have a board that we can put together that has that stuff. It implements not just the video and the keyboard, but also sound, both cassette in sound and game sound going out. It has the 50-pin Model 3 compatible expansion bus on the board. So it's really taking what is largely a TRS-80 Model 3 and squishing it down onto a single board. It's been a really interesting project. And it's certainly the sort of thing that is a lot of fun to work on with somebody, because you get these emails in the morning that say, hey, I've had this great idea, and you head down on another rabbit hole on something else that you want to add. So what we'll do today is go through a little bit of information about the Pocketress project. We'll show it running. As you would expect from any project that Arno's done, TRS-IO features fairly strongly in here. So while you could connect a TRS-IO board, a real physical TRS-IO board, to the expansion bus, it also has the TRS-IO software built into the ESP32 microcontroller. So it really is a single board that pretends to be a Model 3 that will run the Model 3 software. It'll let you access hard disk images like a FreHD would, and it's pretty small. I mean, just as a point of reference, I can hold one up later, but you're looking at a board that's slightly smaller than a FreHD board there. Look, there's all sorts of ideas for why somebody might want this. If nothing else, it's actually a relatively simple project to build up, and it's kind of fun. So even if you don't want to take it on vacation, as Arno suggests on the slide, I think I'd probably get divorced if I tried to do that. It is a fun project to build up and have a bit of fun with. If we look at, there's a couple of things that have really made this possible to do as a project. And that is that there's a variant of this ESP32 microcontroller that's come out that has more memory than the one that Arno uses in the standard TRS-IO products. This module they come up with some great product names. They call it the W-Rover-B. And the thing that's fundamental about this version of the part is that it has 8 megs of what they call PSRAM. And it's that additional memory that has allowed Arno to not only shoehorn Z80 emulation, Model 3 hardware emulation, video generation, PS2 keyboard, cassette, and all that stuff, and the TRS-IO software all into something, this tiny little module, and have it actually run at real world speeds. So very impressive. Oh, and by the way, it's $2.80 US for that chip. So one of the things that's a little bit different with the Pocketress project compared to the other TRS-IOs is that we haven't used an ESP32 development module for it. So if you look back at Arno's other screens or the boards he showed, you would have seen that, actually I've got one here, that the TRS-IO has a module on the board here, and there's a whole lot more than just the ESP32 microcontroller. That's why you pay $11. In this case, what we did was we took the basic W-Rover-B module, put that onto a board, and then put all the remaining support components around that we needed to make this work. So what we've got on the screen here at the moment is an image of the Pocketress board, slightly larger than real life. One of the things you'll probably notice about it compared to a lot of the accessory projects that we play with in the TRS-80 world is it uses surface mount components. Arno made the mistake. I asked him this question. It's like, do we want to do it with through-hold or do we want to do it with surface mount? And he said, oh, you decide. And then I get these emails back going, these parts are tiny. What are you doing to me? But actually, it's not that bad, to be honest. Everything we've picked here are at the larger end of the size. You can actually make this board up. You can hand solder it, right? You don't need anything particularly fancy. Solder wick and a bit of flux and a magnifier will certainly do the job. If you're wanting to actually do a surface mount type project and get a little bit of a feel for how that's done, this would actually be quite a good starting point. One of the things that even as we've built it up, we've kind of worked out all the things you can get wrong. And probably the thing that's easiest to get wrong is you end up with some solder bridges on the 3 TSOP size parts that are on here. Like the normal way of hand soldering these is you pour solder on the pins and then you use solder wick to clean it up. And it's possible to, just leave a little bit of a solder short across a couple of pins. So one of the things, even for our own use during development, is we've created some test software so that you can build the board up step by step, run the test software, and it'll do things like check you're getting the right values out on the different pins. And if you're not, that's a hint that, hey, I've got a solder short here. Let me go back and check that part, get it fixed up, and then move on. So don't let the fact that it is built using surface mount components scare you off from having a go at building one. So just we'll run through the next couple of slides. Rather than me holding up a board and pointing to things, this is a better way to understand what's here. You can see that the size of the board is largely defined by the connectors that are on it. So if we run across the top, as we see here, video out is standard VGA in this case. So we've got a PCB mount, 15-pin D-type socket. Just to give you a feel for how impressive this expressive chip is, the video signals, both the RGB color signals and all the sync, is generated in software by the ESP, in addition to running the Z80 core and everything else. So pretty impressive what can be done these days for a $2 part. I mentioned earlier getting these emails from Arno saying, hey, I've had this idea. Well, one of the ideas that cropped up between version 1 of the board and version 2 of the board was, wouldn't it be great to let people choose their text color, right? If you go back through 80 micro, everybody was looking at ads for green screens and amber screens. And so it's like, sure, let's have a think about how we might do that. And probably one of the reasons from my side that I actually enjoy doing these projects is it sends you down a path to go and learn something about a bit of technology that you may not have dealt with a lot. Well, VGA, hey, we plug stuff into it every day, right? It just works. But how does it work? Turns out that it's actually an analog video signal with a value somewhere between about 0 and 2.5 volts to set the color. If everything's at 2.5 volts, you get white. So what we thought, and we tested it out, and it actually worked really well, is that by using a digital potentiometer chip that's controllable by the ESP32, we could have in software the ESP32 decide, oh, do you want an amber screen, a green screen, or a black and white screen? You could actually have any color you like, to be honest. And one of the joys of Arno publishing the source is that if you want pink text on a black background, go to it. You can modify it yourself. So the little chip that we see underneath the VGA connector here is actually a part from Microchip, who are a very common semiconductor manufacturer. It's a 4-pot digital potentiometer. We only use 3 of those, one for red, green, and blue, 3 signals. And the nice thing for the ESP32 is it doesn't, apart from telling the pot, I want your voltage dividers to be set in a particular way, it's no extra work for the main processor to give you different colored text. You set it and it's done. So that was pretty cool. And it was one of those, hey, here's an idea. Let's see if we can incorporate that in. We've got a PS2 keyboard connector. So using a standard PS2 keyboard with a 6-pin mini DIN socket, you plug into there. There's a couple of pull-up resistors, and then everything else just goes to the ESP32, and it's handled in software. From the software side, Arno's done a bunch of work within the firmware for Pocketress to handle the keyboard, make it work the way a TRS-81 would, map a few keys to do important TRS-80 type things like escape becomes break, for example. And there's some special shortcut keys which can be used for things like resetting the device or putting it into config mode. But other than that, find a PS2 keyboard in the pile of stuff that's in the back room, plug it in, and off you go. The 3.5mm PCB jack that's here provides a TRS-80 style cassette port. So you can take audio files on phone, tablet, computer, play those into here, use the system and C-load functions within BASIC, and it will actually load those, and that works fine. But it also works the other way. So if you load up games that are going to do sound through the cassette port, then connect up a set of powered speakers to here, and it will do that for you. And we'll see how that works. Power for the whole board is provided with through a micro USB connector, which is on the end. And then because the ESP32 particularly is a 3.3 volt part, Arno in his discussion talked about level conversion. We need to drop that down to 3.3 volts to power most of the system. But because we want to have a standard TRS-80 style expansion bus and be able to connect to real TRS-80 peripherals, we need that back to 5 volts for the signaling levels there. And it turned out that the way we've implemented that here solves 2 problems for us. It gives us level conversion from 3.3 from the ESP32 back to 5 volts, but it also allows us to provide or get the number of pins that we need. So on a Model 3 expansion bus, because it's basically I/O port mapping out to the bus rather than memory, we need 8 address lines, 8 data lines, and a bunch of control lines. So the 2 black chips that you see just above that expansion connector there, those are more parts from Microchip. They're actually SPI port expanders. So it allows us to provide the 24 pins that we need out on the bus, control them at an individual pin level, but do that with only 4, actually probably 6 pins back on the ESP32. And we can do it more than fast enough that real peripherals like a FRED or an external TRS-IO will actually run fine connected to the board here. So that also worked out really well. And then the final part that's interesting here is the programming interface. So if you're building up one of these, one of the things you have to do is get the Pocketress software onto the ESP32. The nice thing about the expressive parts is you don't need to go out and get a special programmer to deal with these things. It's done using a standard serial to TTL adapter. You can go and find those on eBay, AliExpress, or wherever you like buying stuff. Couple of things to be aware of though, if you want to build one and you're going to go and either look in the junk box for an adapter or go and get one, you need one that makes the RTS and DTR signals available to you. So the ESP tool programming software for the ESP32 uses those pins as a way of putting the chip into programming mode when you first power it up. So, and we leverage that on the board. In fact, the little components you see to the right of that programming header, there's a couple of transistors and some resistors. Those are all there to program interface. And hold it a second, I will just go and kick the phone. Sorry about that. It was only telemarketing too. It wasn't even anything good.
I was going to say, is it Bill Gates wanting to write a BASIC for your PocketTRS?
It could well be. It could well be. He could be watching this now going, that's where we went wrong. If we only had ESP32s back in 1980, we'd be set.
Bill wanted Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's right. So, so one other thing that's worth mentioning, so a couple of things about the programming. If you are thinking of building one of these and you're going to go out and buy one of these little serial adapters for doing the programming, you need to be a little bit cautious about the chipsets for those. The ones I've had most success with are based around a chipset called a CP2102. They're very common on AliExpress. I try and keep away, particularly if you're buying out of China, for stuff based around FTDI chips and things, because there's lots of non-official chips out there and they're not, you could have a lot of headaches if it's not going to work for you. So that's what our board looks like. One other thing that's worth pointing out is you don't actually have to build up the entire board if you're interested in doing one. So if you think, look, this would be kind of cool to play with, but I really have no interest in connecting real peripherals to it, things like that, then everything on the bottom half of the board that you've got here below the ESP can largely be omitted, right? Just to simplify your construction. But you will obviously want the VGA and the keyboard and the cassette socket and power. So that's the high level. Now, Pete, to do a demo, I'm going to have to use my phone and things as well. So if I hit the Zoom link, I promise to behave if you want to let me in.
Okay. Just let me know what the name is on that.
It'll be Andrew Quinn. So it'll just be, so we'll just pop this up now and get this connected. All right, that seems to work. So we'll start the video here. Actually, if I stop screen sharing, we'll just turn that off. Okay. And now I should be able to convince this. Possibly. I'll just try that again, Pete. Sorry about that.
No problem.
It says you're in safe driving mode. That's interesting. Okay, actually what I'll have to do is I'll just have to change the audio over to the phone. So I'll mute this one.
Andrew, we cannot hear you. Maybe unmute your desktop microphone and just use your camera for the demo. Unmute your desktop because your phone microphone doesn't pick up. We cannot hear you. Unmute your desktop microphone.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
No.
Yep.
Okay. There you go.
No.
Maybe now. Try again. Okay, is that all right?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great stuff. Okay, so what we have here, I will just lift this up, is here is a Pocketress board that basically looks like the one that we have in the video. And you can see that what we've got connected to it is a VGA screen to the Dell screen that's sitting behind us. We've got a PS2 keyboard that's attached. We've got some audio connecting to some powered speakers here, and we've got some USB power. So what we'll do is we'll power this up. There's a couple of things that I'll just do to get that set. So, okay, so this is starting up. Now what you'll find with the Pocketress is it takes about 5 to 10 seconds to come up before you will actually get the screen coming up. What it's got to do is power up, get connected to the Wi-Fi network, and a few things like that. But once it's there, it's running. So most of you will be pretty familiar with that screen. Anybody who's used a Model 3 or Model 4. So what you're seeing there is the Pocketress having started come up. We've effectively got, at this point, the equivalent of a diskless Model 3 with 48K of memory. So if we print mem, we can see that it's got 48K. We can do with this all the things that you would do as a 10-year-old in 1980, anytime you got anywhere near a computer, which was something like this. And of course, it works and does TRS-80 type things. But we can certainly do a lot more with the Pocketress than that very basic example. So one of the things that Arno has in the firmware here is a configuration page. So we hit F3 on our keyboard and it will come up with a Pocketress setup page. We can go into configure, and this then gives us a set of different options that we can use to get the Pocketress to do some different things, get connected to our network, things like that. So if we look at the first thing that's configurable, we were talking before about how we used that digital potentiometer to be able to change the screen colors when we're using the application. So we come down to the screen color option. Perhaps it's time for an upgrade to a green screen. We can select that, jump back to the runtime environment, and now we've got a green screen. The camera doesn't actually do this justice, actually. It looks a little bit more washed out on the video that comes through. It actually looks really beautiful and green on the real screen that's here. But what's happened there is the ESP has gone and sent some commands to that digital pot saying, hey, just adjust the values so that what's going out to the VGA monitor is going to be the required RGB values to give us green. We can do the same thing. If you know you want amber, that's your favorite color choice, and you can get that as well. So in all of those cases, the ESP isn't really changing what it sends to the monitor. It's telling that digital pot, hey, I need you to go and make some changes, change the resistance values, and now the results come out. So that in itself, and the fact that we'll even run BASIC is pretty cool that you can do that on a chip like this.
Andrew, did you
So
say, can I ask you a quick
sorry,
question? You can change the colors to anything you want, you said, right, by programming?
You could do it to anything you could do it to pretty much anything you like. I don't think you can change the background color. Arno might want to talk to that, but you could change the front text color to anything you like. If you talk nicely to Arno, he might be convinced to put an option into the config thing where you could set the RGB values if you wanted something different. The thing that's neat about the way that's implemented, even though it's just changing the color seems like such a simple thing to us with modern computers, but the really cool thing is it's basically done without any real work on the point of view of the ESP for doing stuff, which is pretty neat. Okay, so other things that are pretty neat about this, well, there's actually quite a few, but one of them was that it implements a real TRS-80 Model 3 style interface bus. So what we'll do just to show that going is we'll just power it off at the moment. What I have here sitting on the desk, wait for the video to catch up. This is a real FRED version 3.02, dated 2013. Gosh, Mav, it doesn't seem like it was that long when we were doing that project with FRED, but classic piece of TRS-80 hardware now. So what we will do is we will connect that to the expansion bus. Do this here. You have to excuse my fingers getting in the way of the video for a little bit. Make sure we've got that on. Yes, we have. Okay. And we'll power it up. Oh, let's just remove the cable. Should have got a smaller cable. It's coming back. It's very enthusiastic.
That's a cable boom.
We can watch the electrons going through the wires.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Need some cable management, don't we? So this should come up in a second. Okay, so what we see here, hopefully the camera will focus on that. No.
It's out of focus.
Yeah, there we go. Just tap the screen and it'll get there, maybe. So what we've done here is that the Pocketress has recognized that there is a FRED out on the expansion bus. The Model 3 ROM that's included within the Pocketress firmware is the same one that we use for a real Model 3 for auto boot from a FRED. So it knows what to look for. It finds the FreHD.ROM file on the SD card on the FRED.
Focusing on the cable still.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's squish it down and see if that helps. There we go. I'll just stick a mouse on it to keep it in control.
It's still out of focus.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to convince it otherwise. Let's see if it'll fix itself by opening something. Oh,
there you go.
There we go.
All right.
We just need to change. So what we did in this case was we selected NuDOS from the list. You can see that it booted and ran. All the things that you would expect from a real TRS-80 running NuDOS will work. Just jump back out. Now, we'll just do a quick test. If we run something like Galaxy Invaders, which has sound, and we will get through the interface. We get sound that works really nicely. I mean, I've never been much of a gamer really, and I left this sitting here for a while when I was testing something, and I was actually quite impressed with the demo mode that it's got. I don't know, I mean, you guys probably know all this stuff, but it suddenly woke up and started playing itself, and it's like, well, that's pretty cool. So, you know, maybe this is a great use for Pocketress if you're going out to shows and things like that, is you can just stick something sitting in the corner running Galaxy Invasion all the time.
In arcade cabinets, it's called a tracked mode.
There you go. So, and then if we hit F9 on the keyboard, that's equivalent to reset. There are some physical reset buttons on the device as well. From the testing we've done, it's happy to run things other than NuDOS. So in this case, we can pop up LDOS and off we go. And because it's a real FRED, all the standard utility functions, FreHD util, stuff like that, all work fine. So, so apart from the, generally how impressive it is that not only does it do the video, sound, and all that other stuff, the fact that to things that are connected to the bus, it looks like there's a real TRS-80 and they run at a great speed is, Arno, I think probably what I'm saying is I'm pretty impressed with your ideas. It works really well. So while you can use an external FRED or an external TRS-IO for your storage, the bit that we're finalizing at the moment is actually having TRS-IO running on the ESP processor. So you're back down to a single board. Now, Arno was saying, I always tell my students, don't do a demo. We'll give this a go. I have had, it always works great for Arno. I've had some network issues on my side. So it may work for us today, it may not. But that's something that we're just trying to nut through and work out, if it's not working perfectly for everybody, why is that? And that would be a great reason to have, a few other people build these up and try it on a few other networks. What I'm hoping is everybody says it works beautifully for us and the problem is at my end. So let's have a look at that. We'll just cut the power again. We'll disconnect our FRED from the board.
Out of curiosity, will this be available fully assembled for purchase?
That is a great question, and Arno.
We'll talk about it at the end.
Okay.
I was going to ask.
Solder,
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I guess soldering SMB parts aren't necessarily everybody's cup of tea, although it's a lot of fun if you like doing that sort of stuff. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just power this up again.
How is it powered up?
Sorry, what was that?
How is it powered up? Is it already?
Oh, okay. In this particular case, I'm just running it off a little USB battery pack.
Okay.
You can run it off USB power. You can, you can do whatever you like. But this was easy for the demo. Okay, so what we've done is we've come back. We're back to our basic diskless Model 3. In the config page, one of the options at the top here is enable TRS-IO. So we can change that. And we'll go back and we'll reset. So we've actually got a physical reset button that's here, and it will go and restart the ESP32. And what it's going to try and do here is it's going to connect to the network, and then it's going to look for the SMB shares that are on my system. So very similar to what Arno was demoing with the Model 1. So in this case, it came up and it said, great, I can see your network share. On your network share, there are 2 disk images, UDOS-80 and LDOS. For those of you with eagle eyes, you may notice that on the FRED, those were called F underscore. So it is connecting to something different, and it is getting a different set of images. We'll select UDOS-80. It runs and boots, as you would expect. And because we've got a TRS-IO rather than just an external FRED, and we've got that network connectivity, so all of that stuff that Arno was talking about with the Model 1 applies here as well. You can use the RS client application, which is his RetroStore client, to browse the RetroStore, come up with the list of possible files, and the best way of saying thanks for your time, and I hope you like the presentation, is to have our favorite demon come up and smile and bow at the end of it. So there you go. That's the demo. So if we jump, what I'll do is I'll stop that.
Thank you.
And Arno, maybe you just want to pick it up and just do the wrap up bit of this.
Sure. Can you, since you share your screen, can you share this last slide then, please? Or should I do it? Okay.
No, that's fine, Arno. I can do that. It's all yours.
So, last slide. TRS-IO is this evolving project that started with the RetroStore. Model 1 is working reliably. Model 3 is working reliably. Some documentation needs to be updated. So if you go to the GitHub page, it currently only talks about the Model 3, but the complete source code and KiCad and Gerber files are all already on this GitHub repository. I'm going to add some documentation also for those that want to do it for the Model 1. In terms of Outlook, I don't know. Maybe the Coco might be next. I have never used that machine. I know it's very different. It doesn't use a Z80, but would be a nice challenge, I suppose, to see how generic can you make this project for different platforms. Yeah, for Pocketress, it needs a little bit more work. You maybe saw in the configuration screen that it doesn't populate all the fields properly, and there's a bit more work to do. I'm having some issues with memory still, even though we're using this different ESP controller, but it's all open source. Everything from Gull doesn't need Gull, the Pocketress, but the Gerber files and KiCad, it's all there. With any open source project, so actually, let me mention one thing that that does not yet work reliably, but I hope we can figure out, is also loading via the cassette port. Andrew mentioned it, the 3.5 millimeters audio jack. You can also connect it to a laptop or to a phone, and you can play a WAV file. And then the ESP scans, samples this WAV file and feeds it in as the bits, zeros and ones into the ROM. So you would see those flashing asterisks in the top right corner of the screen. There's some noise somewhere. We haven't quite figured out what's going on there, but I have had it work reliably a few times. That's one of those things that we still need to figure out. But that is one thing that I'm personally proud of, using an analog to digital converter and sampling from an I2S interface. So it's kind of like throwing the full shebang at this problem. There's a lot more technology happening outside of Pocketress and inside the ROM BIOS, but that is also coming soon. I'm sure we'll figure this one out. It's open source, everything. It's on GitHub. Pull requests are welcome, as always, if you have some spare time, if you want to help with this. And someone asked earlier about assembled boards. Sorry, Mav, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but first ask Mav, and if he wants to do it, then he can take it and build it up and send it out in whichever way he wants. And if not, then we'll have to figure something else out. But Mav, if you're interested, then I'd be more than happy to hand both over to you in terms of production and mailing it out to people.
Sounds like I'm going to be building a couple of them for myself shortly.
Well, I'm game, Mav, if you can do it. Or if you would do it.
What about the basic board itself? Where would we get the actual, just the board?
So the board files are in GitHub. So it's KiCad files with the Gerbers. So there's no problem with people grabbing the board and just making it.
If you can build stuff yourself, then it's all in GitHub. So you know, that would be the first place to go if you have the equipment and the skill to build it yourself.
So we also have a bill of materials, of course, a spreadsheet that Andrew compiled. You can actually upload that to DigiKey, and then you get automatically like your shopping cart with all the different parts that you need. There are a couple of components that we got from AliExpress, but it's mostly DigiKey. Again, like the Pocketress GitHub webpage is minimal. It's just like a one-liner, like an almost empty README. But I'm going to add a bit more documentation, also build instructions on how to install the compile, the development environment, and yeah, basically how to build this one up.
Yeah. If you're looking at building it yourself, probably the component that caused Arno and I the most grief is actually the VGA connector, because you wouldn't believe how many different pin spacing versions there are for VGA connectors. So there is a particular one that we got from AliExpress that will be a link to it in the BOM. And that would definitely be the one to go for, because the pin spacing exactly matches the boards.
Is there any possibility of Ian having a kit?
I think I like the idea of kits until people get them and then start attempt to build them. That's my only issue with kits, is that do you mean a completely knocked down kit, Jay, or a
yeah, I mean, just like the Fred used to be, but I'm afraid that what would happen is you get inundated with phone calls when they don't work.
Yeah, it through hole technology, you know, lends itself to kits, but
yeah,
surface mount takes a little bit more technique to get it right. But you know, I do still sell most of my stuff in kit form if people nag me enough and convince me that they've got the skill set to actually build stuff. I do let stuff out in kit form, but I just don't publicize it, because all you need is, you know, one transistor soldered in backwards or something overheated by accident while they're building it, and it can all go pear-shaped and be difficult to diagnose. But yeah, for seasoned electronics technicians who want one in a kit form, they once these have been once the designs have been locked down, they can contact me and we can take it from there.
Mav is great to.
One other quick question I have is, do you guys have an idea what price point is on this going to be on this thing?
Sorry, say again, Jay.
What the price point? You know, how much you're going to sell it for?
As much as I can get.
Oh.
I was going to say, Mav is afraid of getting a return where the entire bottom of the board is covered in solder. Like what happened with, was it Don French and Steve Leininger had that story on the, right, on the Radio Shack clock or whatever it was. When
The
they were
clock, yeah.
TRS-80 as a kid.
Well, you know, if you can get Jay to make the Model 3 shell and Mav to make the boards, you can charge $16.99 as if you were Tandy and just sell them to people.
There you go.
Well,
Gotta have the markup.
Here's a question for Arno and Andrew. Is there any floppy drive support in the Pocketress?
Well, for the Model 1, I guess the problem is that, as I mentioned earlier, I cannot really intercept write commands. So the way the auto boot works right now is I'm flying blind. I know what the ROM BIOS is doing, and just at the right moment, I'm just delivering it the bytes of the boot sector. For generic floppy disk support, I would need to be able to also intercept memory write reliably. And at least with the expansion interface for the Model 1, I cannot do this.
I think, Pete, if you were asking about for Pocketress though,
yes.
No, there isn't, because hey, you've got TRS-IO. Floppies are so last century. Plus, you've got, you know, the import utilities, right? So it's yeah, I don't look, unless you can convince Arno that it's another good academic exercise. I think that might be pushing it.
I think when you get to the point where you're asking about adding, you know, floppy drives and serial interfaces and stuff, you may as well. You probably want a real TRS-80 rather than a Frankenstein board with so many interfaces attached to it. That's me putting the case for using the existing technology.
Well, it's obvious that this is at least many tens, if not hundreds of hours of work that you guys have put into this, and really just as a labor of love and passion, because we know there's really no money in something like this. So thank you, you know, from the community, I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Great.
Yep. Pick up your
So I'm
pocket
going to share
TA21.
I'm going to share the slides with Pete, so there are also the links on the slides, so you can check it out later if you wish.
Arno, the code base that you used for the Z80 and Model 3 emulation, did you just port that over from XTRS, or where did that code base come from?
Yeah, I'm using a multitude of libraries. So for the Z80, I'm using another library. I have taken quite a bit of code from XTRS. So for example, the cassette input, you know, the XTRS has the ability to scan a WAV file and then feed it into the cassette port. So basically I took that code and then swapped out the reading part and connected it to the analog to digital converter. So it's a mishmash of different projects. I'm not using the Z80 from XTRS. I'm using another library just because it had a cleaner interface for the memory and I/O access. XTRS is old code, you know, it's dated, you know, it's homegrown over many years, and for what I needed to do, it was a little bit clunky, so I decided to use a different Z80 library for that part. But I am using some XTRS code as well, and the cassette loading is the big one that I'm using.
And then, of course, there's no floppy drive controller emulation since you're not emulating the disk drive.
No. It is fully compatible to, well, So it has a built-in TRS-IO as Andrew demoed, but the 50-pin expansion interface, and that's why Andrew also connected like a FRED, just to show it also works with other hardware. And actually, that is where I see maybe a possible value of Pocketress, maybe for testing purposes. You know, that imagine if you have a test script. You know, if you're building an external board and you wanted to automate some regression test or something like this, you know, where you can then use Pocketress to run some test cases. So I think that might be a value for someone who is building up external hardware.
Very good. Okay. Well, Arno and Andrew, thank you so much. We do have another presentation to get to, so let's move on to that. So I'm sure many of you are aware that MAV recently released a reproduction of the Chroma TRS, the color video board for the Model 1, 3, and 4. And Tim Halloran has been playing with it and hacking it, and he has some interesting observations and solutions that he's come up with that he wants to share with us. So Tim, are you there? And if you
yeah,
are,
can I share my screen? It says I can't share while someone else is sharing. Whoever's sharing, can you see?
Andrews is still, there we go.
Okay, let me try again.
You're on.
Oh wait, I want web browser. Share. Okay. Can you see the, okay, looks good.
Yep.
All right, thanks. Everyone can hear me, I assume. So this is about the Chroma TRS, hacking it in 2020. And I'm mostly going to talk about changing the board to use 5 volts only, and some restoration of cassette software. And I kind of did this, but this was a lot of help from lots of folks on Discord helped me and that sort of thing. All right. So some background, and this Iris site has some more background. All of this is from that, so feel free to look over there. This is from 1982. Interestingly, this has the TMS9918A, which is the same graphics chip in the TI-994A. So there's a bunch of software, and some of the software has been lost. Pascal Holdry, I guess is how you pronounce it, reverse engineered it, and Ian has these. So there's modulo postal problems trying to get you one. I think you can chat with him if you're interested in this. So my interest was actually programming this thing. So when Ian announced it on Trash Talk a long time ago, I thought, wow, this would be great. I could do some programming of this and have some cool color software at Tandy Assembly 2020. Well, given the best laid plans, that kind of went completely off the rails. We didn't even have Tandy Assembly 2020, but it became very hard to get these because of the postal problems. So Ian was able to send me a blank board. And this took me an awful long time to get to work. Big thanks for the Discord folks. I will definitely echo what Mav has said, that these are hard to build if you don't know what you're doing. I have some skill in an oscilloscope, but that does not mean I have a double E degree. Whatever we're paying Mav to assemble these boards and test them, it's way too little. I can tell you that right now. But I'm not going to go through the getting it to work war story. I'm going to focus on these things. One is 5 volt only mod. The problem with this is that the original board and the reconstructed one needs 5 volts, -5 volts, and 12 volts, and that's a pain. So I modded the board to work on 5 volt USB power, and in fact, you can see it running on the dual screens there, which brings me to the second thing. In addition to color composite monitors, you can also use it on a Model 1 screen. So if the problem is you're a Z80 user and you're highly chromophobic, this is great. I'll show you how to hook it up to a black and white monitor and you don't have to see any colors. So that's the solution, use that. But it's kind of cool, even if you don't want it. Secondly, I started in on the software with a lot of help from George Phillips. There's no cassette software. There was only disk images only, and this seems lost. So luckily, the source code was released. Ira has it, and I was able, with George's help, to hack in ZMAC to recreate some of the cassette software. And in fact, the demo running behind me and all the pictures I'm going to show are actually cassette loads. They're not being loaded from disks to images. All right, so here's the power mod. I won't go through all the details here. In the chat, I linked the slides so anyone can open them up and take a look at this if you have one of these. This is a fairly straightforward mod. The -5 and 12 volts are for the memory only. So the first thing I did was construct a special power cord using a USB adapter. And you can see it plugged into the USB, and this is how this is running. And this will provide 5-volt power at about 1 amp. The board only needs about ½ an amp. So I'll show you how to hook that up, and you're actually only connecting 2 of the pins. You have to do a couple of other things to the board to make this work. First is you need, after you have the power cord to hook it up, and you don't have to use USB. If you have a 5-volt power supply, that'll work fine. Use 4517 memory chips rather than 4116. And I've got the pinouts here, and you can sort of see the trick to this is you have to bridge the 12-volt and 5-volt lines and then just not put anything on the -5-volt line. So there's kind of 2 ways to do it that I show in the way over to the left. Underneath the power connector, this is what I did on my board, just bridge the 5-volt and 12 volts with a little piece of wire and solder. If you have one MAV put together, that's kind of annoying, and you might want to take it back to use all the others. So you can just put jumpers on the headers over by the graphics chip, and I show that. I've got 2 of them just to add more things, but that'll work fine too. And that's pretty much all you have to do. And that will run on 5 volts. Secondly, it's a really good idea to put a heat sink on the TMS-9918. This thing will heat up ridiculously hot. So if you run it for like a day, it's going to get really hot. So I just stuck 4 Raspberry Pi heat sinks on it. It's cheap and seems to work fine. Another note, for some reason, and I hope most of these, I do not know why, but we ended up bending out pin 39 on my graphics chip. It is unclear if this is needed or is a special feature of my construction job. So just FYI, a symptom is a bad picture that will not adjust in. So you can see the board is working fine, but you can't get it to go. And it has to do with the clocks not syncing right. So haven't really delved into this. Hopefully, I know that Peter has a board, Peter Satinsky, and his works, and he's obviously not doing this. So I wonder if there's something strange I did that.
When you see 2 crystal inputs like that, usually it's a differential input, and you can put a crystal across it with the right caps. It's like an op amp in there that goes from one crystal to the other, so you really should only use one.
Yeah, so like just to FYI that this I had to do. And once I did this, boom, the picture was crystal clear, looks better than I could imagine. So just so folks know. If you construct a board from scratch and you're gonna go to 5 volts, you don't need to put all the capacitors in. You can see that I've only populated the 12-volt caps, which are down near the power pin on the 4517 memory. There's no reason to put all those capacitors in, so you can save a few capacitors in cost if you're cheap and you're building this thing up from scratch. I don't think they hurt anything if you put them in, as far as I know. And okay, that's kind of it for the board. The second thing, which was kind of fun, was actually we were working on Arno's project, and George Phillips had suggested, hey, can you run this into a Model 1 monitor? And I said, yeah, that'd be fun. But I couldn't figure it out for a while until I looked at if you look over on the left, that's the schematic of the Model 1. And I figured out that the interesting bit of creating a composite in on a monitor is you have to provide a 5-volt line. Inside the Model 1 monitor, there's a little board that stands up, and half of that board is isolated from the hot chassis video, and that is actually powered by the line from your computer with the 5-volt line. So you need a really special cable, and you can see a picture of the cable I made. You can see the 5-foot DIN female input goes to the composite, so ground and composite go to the composite. The RCA input there, but you also have to run just the red wire is going to go to 5 volts. And you can see in the middle of this diagram where I plugged it into the Chroma board. So this would work with any video, any composite video, as long as you can get a 5-volt source for the computer. So like in a Coco, you'd have to open it up and attach that red wire to somewhere on the 5-volt grid, and make sure that the composite line and the 5-volt line are relative to the same ground. Don't hook this up to like another 5-volt power supply. That is not going to be good. And as you can see, that's kind of what the color graphic screen looks like. It's black and white, and it does do grayscale. It's kind of cool. The one thing I noticed is it is a little wider for some reason than the Model 1, so you can't fit the whole picture on the screen, but it's still kind of neat. And if you see the video, I actually split the composite out out of my Chroma board, and you can see the Pac-Man demo screen running on both the black and white Model 1 monitor and the composite video. All right, finally, if you do this to the monitor, I highly recommend Dennis Bathroy Kitts recommended in a reverse video mod to strap a 1.5K ohm resistor on R14. And you can see in the picture that's inside the monitor. That's what the monitor that's running this looks like. If you've ever like run something on a 101 monitor and you put like all white on it and had the monitor go nuts because there's too much white on the screen, this mod that he did actually fixes that. And because the Chroma drives a lot of white, or can, depending on what color or grayscale, this is highly recommended. Be careful, be safe, get help if you don't know how to like discharge the tube. Like don't kill yourself taking your monitor apart. And finally, this mod I actually recommend for any Model 1 monitor. It seems to just make it better. I don't think there's any real drawbacks to it. You don't have to go buy, like this is enough information to do this. You don't have to go buy the custom TRS-80 and other mysteries because you need to do this mod. Although I would recommend just buying that book because it's awesome. And if you actually work on Model 1s, you should, it's pretty cool. Amazing amount of content in that one book. All right, so what happened was, switching to software for just a minute, I'm almost done. The cassette driver and program restoration. So once I got stuff that I thought worked, Mav has this like Maze diskette zip, which has disk images. And honestly, on Ira's site, if you search for Chroma TRS, there's actually quite a few downloads that are there as well. But all of this stuff is like software image disks. And despite this being discussed on the manuals, there isn't any cassette images. And Ira helped. We tried to post to ask people if they had them, but no one seems to have them. So I kind of dug in a little bit because we had some of the source code and recreated the cassette images for the Chroma TRS. And I'm still sort of working on this. This link here, this GitHub link, is where all the stuff is. So more stuff will appear. But I wanted to shout out huge thanks to Robert French for releasing this code to Ira, and I guess Mav too, because having the source code helped a lot. George Phillips consulted on getting these things, which were probably righted for like EdTASM or something, into readable on a modern machine and in ZMAC. So what have I got going today? Working to date, I've recreated the cassette driver. It's the 48K version, but just recompiling, you can do 32. And I'm waiting, Mav's sending me a cable for the Model 1. I've not actually been able to run this off a Model 1 because I don't have the right kind of cable. But I will check it out and maybe get a 16K version of the driver. The basic demos work just fine. You can run all of them. It draws lines and makes sounds, and you can have one where you type stuff in on the TRS-80 and draw pictures. And the Pac-Man game works. This was kind of fun because this Pac-Man game used like DOS commands to load files. So after consulting with George, we actually inlined the files as bytes by loading them into the thing. And there were a few tricks and traps, but the Pac-Man game now loads from a CAS image and runs. And that's in fact what's running behind me. So the demo is running behind me. I didn't get a lot of time to do this, and the demos are really hard to see, but I figured I'd take a couple of pictures that people could see over the thing to see the images. So you can clearly see the driver load on the left, and you can see I've hacked it up because it says for orders and info, go to Ian Maverick, not what it did say. and kind of draws the colors. And in fact, on the right, what you're seeing is it's running the Pac-Man game from cassette load images. So these CAS files are out there. This is the cool board. It's kind of fun. It's neat that Pascal and Mav have kind of recreated it and made it available. It's a lot of fun. And if you don't have to spend 3.5 months trying to get yours to work, you'll probably have more fun.
Can I ask a quick question of you?
Good thing. So have Mav test it out for you before you get one. Thanks.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So on the left, the Model 1 screen, is that just shades of gray? It's not clear enough to see if it's washed out color or whether that's just
it's absolutely shades of gray. Yeah, the Model 1 monitor can't display color, and it is grayscale as far as I can tell.
Now, is that something that was normally available on the Model 1 to be able to do shades like that?
If you have the cable, you have to create that cable. And I think you could run a Coco into the Model 1 monitor with this special cable. I haven't done that yet, but I was joking with, I think, George or somebody that I could go to Coco Fest with my Model 1 monitor and my Coco 3 and hook that up. And
back in like 1982, 83, I had a Model 1 with the 48K interface. So it's been that long since I've seen that screen. So yeah, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, no, that was just more or less kind of a fun little hack with hardware to make it show up. And it does in fact work. So once I figured out I needed the 5-volt line, it wasn't too hard to do it, especially since my Chroma TRS is sitting on top of the Model 3. So it was a matter of just plugging into the header to get the 5 volts and came right up.
Just with the shades there, that's awesome, and let alone the color. So yeah, that's cool.
It's just this is just a cheapo like security monitor you can buy for $80-90 on Amazon that has a HDMI and all kinds of inputs, but one of them is composite, and that's what it works fine. It has the right, what I liked about it was it's small and it has the right aspect ratio for the Chroma.
The Pac-Man game is really good. I played. What was the name of that?
It's just Pac-Man in this, but I've seen other folks running. I asked on, I think it was on Facebook, someone posted there was another game that is like Pac or something that's got slightly different colors, and I'm not sure. I asked where the software came from, but I didn't get an answer.
Yeah, I played this one on my Chroma TRS. It's a really good. You can't believe you're playing on the Model 1. It's like it's better than almost any game I've played on a TI-94. Using the same graphics chip. So, yeah, and I don't know a lot. I have a TI-94, but I've never done much with it. But I know it mostly uses the memory inside that is attached to the video memory to run things. Versus in this configuration, you've got all the memory in the TRS-80, plus you've got the memory in the Chroma to store sprites and graphics. There's 16K on this Chroma board, so it's not surprising that it's there. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, it looks like it'd be fun to program. So if any of you are assembly language programmers, I think getting one of these and poking around with it seems very reasonable. And I think we've kind of like, with George's help, that GitHub repository has some good starter programs so far, including Robert French's original code. And like I said, my hope is to actually get to where I write some of my own. We'll hope to get there. I never thought I'd see a Chroma TRS, in my lifetime. So it's almost like we're entering a golden age of TRS-80 accessories and collecting, because all of the accessories that you thought you'd never see or were so rare they didn't even exist are being reproduced now, or a good portion of them. So
right at the moment that worldwide shipping is at its worst, it's been in 100 years.
Yes. In fact, I think you just got, Ian, an actual 9918, right? Have you gotten a board going, or like you just got chips?
Not enough hours in the day. I've got the chips here. I've got the boards built up, but I've also got an assembly line of other things that need to ship out on Monday, which is tomorrow. So it's on the to-do list.
So Matt has never actually gotten one of these to run at his house yet. So it's a little bit of this one's been at a bad time for shipping around the world. definitely.
Yeah, we couldn't get the 99 1.8 chips in Australia for some reason. So I've had to had Tim kindly send me a few.
Yeah. And I think Peter's got one going. Someone else posted on Facebook that they had one going, and then we have mine. I don't know how many of the others have actually worked yet. So it'll be.
No,
It's an easy build. It's just a long. It's an easy thing to build. It's just a long build because there's so many parts, which is why I like the 5-volt conversion, because you got a bunch of less capacitors to put in, and the rest of it can be built in a night or two.
Yeah, so the slides are here. I also hope to write up for like TRS 8-bit how to do the 5-bit conversion. I just haven't gotten it done. A 5-volt conversion, but I haven't gotten to that yet. Only so many hours in the day.
Definitely.
As Mav said.
Thanks so much, Tim. So that ends the official presentations that we had scheduled for today. But I want to ask, does anybody out there have something that they want to show that they've been playing with? Just speak up. Karen, you're raising your hand.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I have a mess of a Tandy 6000 sitting here. The entire top is destroyed from shipment. Luckily, the entire machine works just fine. The front part of the chassis holding the monitor and the floppies, it's cracked. It's cracked pretty badly, actually. But it seems like I could get in there with some super glue and kind of get that reassembled. Way off the topic here. I was actually thinking of doing like a steampunk case for it with copper tubing and framing and kind of like I don't know what that movie's called, where the people have the magnifying displays in front of the monitors. That would just be something really cool. But at any rate, speaking of not soldering very well, I've got this floppy cable conversion from 50 pin to 34 pin for my whatchamacallit tech device, and the DRIM. I've got the DRIM sitting here. I need to commit time to sitting down and ordering up the cable ends and getting that going. But I think the reason I am getting reconnected with TRS-80 is because of what this machine actually represented to me in my career. It was really one of the first machines I sat down to that ran Xenix, other than my 286 box with SCO so many years back. And I've wanted one of these forever. So here it is, and unfortunately, it's not in the shape I ordered it in. But I'm going to be reaching out, and I know I have, and I'm probably annoying everyone out there with what parts I need to get this going. Mostly it's because I'm being a refuse-nic and ordering the ends and the cables and the crimpers. I'm sure I could do it. I just don't know where to get these parts anymore. But I think within the next 2 to 3 weeks, this machine's going to be spinning up Xenix again. I've been playing with the software emulator, the TRS-80 GP. I really like that. As a matter of fact, it gave me some confidence to move forward with my 6K project. So if y'all see me screaming out there, either bloody murder or help, it's going to be for a good cause to get this thing going again. And there's might even be the outside chance that when I'm completely finished with this, that I'll put this in my Model 4 for sale. No particular reason why, but it's like the Princess and the Pea. If I have something and it's not working, I have to get it working before I do anything else. So I do want to get this up and completely running. I do want to thank Ian and Joel Hilliard, by the way. He reached out in chat here and said to say hi to everyone. He couldn't make it today. But yeah, so thank you all very much for the help that you've been supplying so far. If nothing else, I'll get another 6K back in really great running condition. I'm going to upgrade the RAM. I don't think there's anything I can do for the case unless someone else wants to take that on in the future. But I see myself as a steward of this machine and not an owner. So if it gets passed on, it's going to get passed on in really great condition. So again, thank you to everyone that's reached out and helped me.
Don't pass it on, because 5 minutes after you pass it on, someone will say, hey, I found a case for one of those things in an attic somewhere. It's like, You do car stuff, Karen. You know what it's like. As soon as you abandon
Yeah.
a project, everything comes together at a great
Oh,
price.
don't get me going. I've been looking at the price of those cars and they've gone back up again. So right after I
Yeah.
sell them. Oh,
Yeah.
disappointing.
Hey, I wanted to just mention something. Dusty, are you you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm here, Mav. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I thought I'd mention to everyone that the competition entries are starting to come in for the competition for TRS 8-bit newsletter. So everyone that's on here, even if you're not going to enter, where you get the chance, mention that this competition's on, and the entries close at the end of November. So we're coming up to the pointy end of the competition, and we wanted to make it a big one this year. So there's lots of good, cool prizes, thanks to me. And and yeah, we've tried to make it as a programming competition as open as anything. Any game genre, any system that has a Tandy or TRS-80 label on it, we are accepting entries. The funny bit I thought was that the reason behind this year's competition was that the Coco community is so prolific at releasing new software. We wanted to get more new monochrome games software out there, hopefully. The first entry that came in that was complete was for a Coco, so I found that amusing anyway. So but yeah, we got a steady flow of them coming in at the moment. All the information's on Dusty's site. You want to tell us about your site, Dusty?
Yeah, it's TRS-80, trs-80.org.uk. There's obviously a fantastic choice of prizes from Mav's Element. And the second prize, I've actually got them now. It's a limited edition set of first day covers from the Royal Mail in the UK. And it's of 1980s 8-bit type games, which is a very unusual subject for in the UK. But anyway, I've got the set. That's for the second award.
Awesome. So yeah, everyone get your entries in, or spread the word on whatever forums or groups or discords you're on, that yeah, this is a competition. It's just got to be a TRS-80 or Tandy entry.
And just to clarify, I'm not eligible, right?
Yeah, you're eligible.
Oh, I didn't think I was.
Why not?
I'm not eligible. That's the way I see it. I can't give myself a prize. So.
Mav wins a prize.
But
Hey, why don't we have a look? We've got some new people on that have been on the first time. I'm seeing David on there. I've never seen you online. How you going, Coop?
Yeah, no, I don't actually know when this starts. You just pointed out to me that it was going on, so I jumped on.
Yeah,
yeah, I thought you'd like it. You know, a lot of us here. You can see Ira there. I'm waiting for a cat to walk in front of Ira there, but I guess there hasn't been a lot to do with TRS-80.us, unfortunately, in recent times.
No, I haven't had time to really go back to that. Been working at a startup for the past couple of years, so it's been taking all my time.
Yeah, no, it's all good. We know that when you got the time, you'll bring it back. It was a great resource.
Oh yeah,
a lot of us enjoyed there. So
I kind of have switched over now to. I mean, not switched over, but the time I did have, I've been spending kind of on my mini computers at the moment. So the micros have kind of been shoved to the side, but yeah.
What do you got? Some PDPs or VAXs or?
Yeah, I got in my living room right now. I have a VAX 750 that I'm working on.
Oh, every
living room
should have.
Wow. Everyone should have a VAX 750. Everyone should not have 5, which is what I have. But
I'm going to guess
got-
you're a bachelor, David.
yeah, although this madness started when well, never mind. I at the moment, yes.
I've
But I
got.
have an 1170 I'm working on as well.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
And a few
You
other
must have an amazing electricity bill.
Yes.
You have 3-phase power coming to your house?
No, not yet. Actually, okay, so a friend of mine and I this weekend are going to go pick up a CDC Cyber 960, which is this giant supercomputer from the 90s. So that'll be fun. It weighs about.
I remember those. RMIT had one. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had
And I
pictures
thought
of
I was
Cybermen all over the place. They called
Yes, I
themselves Cybermen.
programmed one of those years ago. That was not fun to work on, as I recall.
You can see my 1200 here in the background.
Nice.
Yeah.
I thought I was bad with my SGI Origin 2000 desk sides. I mean, just turning those on, the lights dim in the house. So.
Who else we got here that's new? Richard Lamb. I don't recognize that name. How you going, buddy?
Hi there. I've been trying to develop some new TRS-80 software since about 2014. I've been trying an experiment to see if I can make new software by cross-compiling. So I'm using modern tools to try and develop games that actually run on real TRS-80s. It's going quite well. I mean, there are 2 development toolkits out there. There's SDCC and ZB88K. SDCC produces better code. They both work, of course, but it's all about the code, because when you look at the output, I'm staring at the assembler output, I'm thinking, oh, this compiler's terrible. So you really have to be quite clever as you code it to make it at least give half a chance of producing code that actually works and fits on a real TRS-80. So that's the objective. But once you
go on.
So once you get a few tricks, it's actually quite possible. And of course, when you're working in, everything's written in C, so that's my point. And there's a few assembler functions that you need, of course, to do some stuff on the TRS-80. And the advantage is you can make high-level changes a lot easier than if you wrote it all at the low level. Sometimes you sit and over a coffee, you might say, I know, I'll just rearrange the data structures like this. And of course, the compiler will generate all the right code for you. You might find that the order of data make a difference in either the size or execution or the overall code size. So I've come up with 3 rules, which I've got no CPU, no memory, and no speed. So it's a real challenge to get anything to come out. So I've been working on trying to rewrite some of the classic TRS-80 games with the same flavor as the original, but with maybe some new twists or some new features. I actually sent an email to you. I might be going into your competition. I'm redoing a Star Trek game, trying to rewrite Temple of Achi. And I've also been looking at some experiments with the high-res graphics card, trying to go, George was helping me on the forum a little bit about, I've got some ideas to maybe speed up how fast it is to draw on the using the high-res graphics card. So I'm wondering if I can do something with that at some point. Actually, I might be asking someone out there if they'd like to try one of my demos at some point on a real machine, because I think the timing's wrong on the emulators with the high-res graphics card. So I'd like to know whether it really does work, the performance-wise, on a real machine. So I could just buy one of your cards. That's what I'm thinking. Buy one of your cards and plug it in. That's what I might do at some point. But I was going to write
as a kit and assemble it.
Oh yeah. But
so I'm guessing you've got. So I'm guessing you've got a Model 4 there. That's what you're writing for.
Yeah. They're sitting behind me. There's one here. There's one here. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh God.
I'm glad to see that the manhandling of these machines is limited to any one country.
I've got a couple of 4P I've been using as well. I quite like the 4P because it's a little bit easier. It takes up less space. But I haven't got a Model 1 that works at the moment. I did have one, but it broke.
They were broken when you bought them. What do you mean? They never.
Well, I lent it to someone and it come back broke. That's what happens, isn't it? You know, never lend it to anybody and it comes back broke. Yeah.
Does the compiler you use produce tight Z80 code or fairly sloppy code?
It's when you look at it, you think, oh, I could have written that better. I could have written that a lot better myself. But what might happen is that, you know, 10 minutes later, you might have you might want to change the algorithm. If you're writing new stuff, you think, oh, hang on, I want to make it do this now. So the approach is to use the compiler as much as possible. And then when you've got everything completely working and you think, right, I don't want to change this anymore, I'm now done. Then you might take bits and pieces and say, right, I'm going to hand code that bit, or I'm going to hand code that bit. For example, you know, anything that hits the screen, for example, you think, right, I've tried to write my best, you know, plot and line draw functions in C, and I still look at them and think, I could write that better by hand. Say, but not hugely. I reckon, you know, probably only 10% better. But you probably want that 10% at the end of the project, you know, that kind of, yeah.
So I've been using SDCC for the RetroStore client that I demoed earlier. And I began building up a little C-based library for this UI elements, like this navigation bar, you know, where you can move the cursor up and down and select like from a list. Do you have anything out on GitHub, Richard? I'd be curious to take a look at your setup.
Just go to Voidware, GitHub, search for Voidware. There's about 3 TRS-80 projects there. All the source code is there. The SDCC files. You also might want to take a copy of os.c.ios.s that I use, which is basically helping SDCC. Because there's no C runtime for SDCC. It's not a complete system. So I've written missing bits for the TRS-80, you know, to get started, that kind of stuff, and some basics, some things there. So the only thing, a project I haven't put up there is, I need to post that soon, is I decided to write my own copy of BASIC, which is different from the built-in one, but it's got its graphics commands, and the original never had any. As far as I'm aware, most of the BASICs didn't have any graphics commands, so I thought I'd start adding some. So I wrote this really simplified BASIC, which it doesn't do any floating point. It's all just integer. So it was the idea was to write really simple games with it. So you could do some graphics, draw some lines. It has a sprite draw, that kind of stuff. You can play sounds, and you can do, you know, it works as you can run expressions and so on, and variables work the same as standard BASIC, but you can't have any floating points. So I wanted to keep it quite small. So that's like, the source code of that is like literally like 2 or 3 pages. So that compiles up really small. I actually wrote this for a different project. It was, someone wanted me to build an embedded project to drive a board that flashed and lights. So I decided to write a little basic instruction. I thought, hey, I could make this work on the TRS-80. So I did. Yeah, I'll post the source code for that as well. That's called BBasic. But if you have a look on Voidware, you'll find Trek 14, APSHI 19. These are the dates I started. There's Scott 19, wasn't it? I ported Scott Adams's game system to the TRS-80. There was a guy on the forum really interested in this because apparently the originals never ran on the Model 4. So the emulator now runs on the Model 4, and it can take advantage of the 80-column screen, which was quite nice. And even got the save game to work. And that was, I have some help from people online for that, to get the save and get the disk I/O working. But yeah, so I'm hoping to do some. So yeah, so I'm working on. It might be this Christmas. I might work on my Temple of APSHI remake. The difference between the original is this one generates the dungeons on the fly. So I don't know if you recall that the original had a fixed dungeon. This one actually creates it. The real challenge, I've done that bit, works. but there's no combat and things yet, because the real challenge was to get dungeon creation working on the TRS-80 and actually create a credible dungeon. Because if you go on the internet, there's loads of algorithms for how to create, dungeon, dungeon stuff and rogue type dungeon logic, but they're all based on these really complicated algorithms. And I thought, no, you cannot run that on the TRS-80. You cannot have like Delaunay triangulation with energy minimization algorithms and all this. I think, no, I want something really simple. So it took me a while to come up with an algorithm. I simplified it and simplified it and simplified it to try and make it actually, so, and it has to generate the dungeon in something like 10 seconds, which is also a challenge as well. So yeah, that's all there. If you look at that's all there as well. So it draws, and you can pan and zoom in real time the actual dungeon, whereas the original, if you recall, took actual minutes to draw. So this is running on a real machine. So I'm hoping if I get time over Christmas, I'll write the actual monster combat, which could be fun. At the moment, you can move about, but there's no actual game. So that's not really a game yet. It's a work in progress. It's about half finished. Yeah. What else have I got? But yeah, everything I do, all the code is all already all the sources public. So yeah, I think I'll be putting in one of my games that's probably the first one I started into your competition. Hopefully. Yeah.
Can you put a link up somewhere to the cross compiler information? Is it?
Sure.
Are you working under Linux or Windows or?
Well, all you need in order to recompile, you just need FDCC, and the actual source code is in C, and you should be able to build, and it builds a TRS-80 command file, and you can then put that on your TRS-80. Let me.
That's absolutely cool. I can't wait to see some of your work.
There's a link to his GitHub in the chat if you want.
Oh yeah, go to that. Go to that one.
No idea how to see that.
Right. So that one.
Voidware.
Yeah.
Okay.
For example, there's this one. Hang on. And there is.
Oh goodness.
This one.
Everything's under Voidware, right?
Yeah, there's all my other projects that aren't TRS-80 related on here, so you want to ignore those. Oh, there's this one. That's a TRS-81.
Well, don't post anything that you want to compete with in the competition.
Oh well, the one I'm thinking of putting the first one, the Star Trek. But I've got to do a bit more work on it. What I actually did is that was the first project, and it had a few problems with interrupts, and I've now fixed that with the other projects, and I've backported the fixes. So I've got to do a bit more work on that. To actually, I've got to also test it, a bit more testing before it's ready to actually submit as an entry. Yeah. So so actually it's really easy to recompile them. All you have to do is you can follow, there's a link to SDCC. You have to get that, and then if you're building on Linux or whatever, just make sure you've got that installed, and then the make-file will just build. So I've got a couple of videos there of the gameplay. I'm having a problem at the moment on the TRS-80 GP emulator where some of the pixels come out half height, and I don't know how that is possible.
A bug?
Yeah, well,
because you're writing them all the time.
Huh.
Just
as a quick side note, SDCC is available in my Linux repo, so easy. That's really awesome.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you, Richard. Patrick, how you doing down there? I see you got the security camera working.
You're muted, Patrick.
I think he's well.
I'm technically challenged.
How's Tandy Restorations? How's business?
Actually a little bit busy after all the postings I've done about the restorations of the skins. Got people from UK going like, "Would you do one for me?" I'm like, "No."
I hear some people are looking for 6,000 skins.
No, I just do the repaints. I don't do the repros.
Probably start a little cottage industry selling those cans of color matched paint.
Well, see, I considered that, and I said one to Peter quite a few months ago, and we won't go through the experience of explaining what happened, but let's just say that it is a paint process, and it's not your trim clad paint that you're just painting some metal railing and it's okay if it's not perfect. It's a flat surface. If you don't know how to paint a flat surface with an actual paint, it's going to look like shit. It's just simple as that. It's a technique that's learned and is practiced. I can sell the paint, but I have to put a label on it. It's like, I don't guarantee your job's going to come look like mine does.
Yeah, but I think there's also a range of shitness, for want of a better description. And if you've got a scratched up, worn out Model 3 case, anything, even a quick gloss over with a rattle can that's the correct color, most people will be more than happy with their slightly crapulent result.
Did Patrick just say I paint like shit?
No, I didn't say that. You got the scrappy result because you're doing it in 50 degrees. It's all about the technique. It's not how you paint. It's a lot of things fall into place. If it's not prepped properly or it's not primed properly, you're not going to get a awesome result. Or, oh my God, it looks exactly like it should be when it was purchased.
I have to say, Patrick's paint formula is the best I've seen. In my experience, I'm not going to say my poor preparation skills and whatnot. It wasn't 100% factory perfect, but to the untrained eye, it looks the same, and it's the best I've seen. I haven't seen better.
And at $25 a can, it's hard for me to say, yeah, it's your fault all the time. So I have to have a disclaimer off the top, as in like, if you've never done this, I can send you the can, but I don't guarantee the results. And it's not a $5.95 can Rust-Oleum. It's $25. So I don't know, if people are really interested in buying $25 to paint a can. I can do 2 Model 3s with 1 can.
But it's all in the preparation, like you kind of saying.
Yeah.
It's all the preparation.
Most people don't have the patience.
No. Patrick, just make a video.
The to-do list isn't long enough, Patrick.
The problem with doing a video, and I guess I could, is just, you gotta understand, I work in a shed, okay? Some of you don't know where I am, but the back wall is arm distance from me. And I'm arm distance from the computer. So I'm 6 feet long from arm to arm, okay? That's how wide the building is in here. And I share the room with mowing equipment, storage stuff. So my space is very limited. So what I work on is square footage. There's my paint table. Right here. There you go. That's my paint table. Okay. So this is an enclosed area, and I'm using a high quality automobile paint that will make you high as a kite. Okay.
I was going to say you paint and then get out as quickly as possible.
So it's basically take a deep breath, do your layers, and then open the door and get out, because you'll get massive headaches and everything. So doing a video is all nice, and I could do it, which is, I'll think about it. I'll see if I can come up with something that's decent. It
might be fun to watch.
Yeah. 5 minutes of spray paint and 2 hours of coming down from being high.
Yeah, particularly if you get high and drop an F-bomb or something.
I just did.
So,
I'd pay to watch that.
I'll try to see. I got another case I got to do for another client, so I may just do that for the fun of doing it. Look at that. I was going like, yeah, send me a copy. I'll put it on the website.
Absolutely will.
there's 50 ways to kill a cat, okay? And there's probably 100 ways to paint plastic. I just do it the way I know to do it. Is it professional? I don't know. It's just the way I learned it. I can do it.
Anything's better than that one on YouTube, the guy that went to all that trouble to paint the Model 1 that looked like shit.
You mean you're talking about the 8-bit guy?
I think so. I watched
Did
it one
8-bit guy
time
paint a Model 1? Oh my
and
God,
thought,
that's horrible.
why did he bother?
Oh.
By the way, speaking with Patrick, so
It was when he did that paint job on the what?
Oops.
No, talking about the 8-bit guy, there's nothing wrong with what he did. It's just that he was trying to give an example how to do some stuff and make it acceptable to yourself. Like you were talking to some people, they'll just buy the trim clad that fits approximately in the range of paint, just spray it on it, and hey, it's cool, I like it. Everybody's their own little thing. I'm just more, when it comes to paint, I'm just more particular, that's all. It's got to match.
So Patrick thinks I have a problem.
There we go.
It's not the only one.
You have a problem.
This
Isn't it right behind you?
This came up the other day, and apparently, I counted the other day, and I actually do have 100 TRS-80s, including Cocos.
Oh my God.
Cocos into account.
Jeez. Why would you include Cocos?
Not including the Cocos, it's about 90. Is that too much?
The first step is admitting you have a problem, Pete.
So, Pete, of that collection, do you have a spare 6,000 case?
I have a few.
Oh boy, here we go. Can I have your stuff?
That'd be more than a Radio Shack service center, wouldn't it, Ken?
Yeah.
But you got to have spares, and you got to have spares of each model, and each variation of each model, right? So it comes out to about 100.
We love you to death. All we want is that you make sure that in your will that everything goes to an estate sale and is only allowable to be sold to people like us.
That's actually good. That I've been thinking about that. Not that I'm getting too old, but what do I do with all my stuff if I should pass on? I'm definitely not giving it to my kids. They're not worthy.
You won't know what to do with it.
Leave it to your Facebook friends.
I thought about that too. You definitely have to plan ahead. I probably, I don't have anywhere near your collection, Pete, but I probably have 20 Commodore Amigas here. I love Amigas. I support that community probably as much as Pete does the TRS-80 community. And I know they're worth a mint. I just don't know what to do with them, literally. and a lot of silicon graphics gear. I just spent way too much money.
If you've got the space for them, just put them aside for your retirement fund. Top up your retirement fund.
And that's a good idea too.
Can Amiga's Bitcoin mine?
No. It would probably take, a billion times longer than a worthy machine. Although, probably like this community and all this new gear coming out, and Peter was right. It's just amazing that we're living in this golden age. The same applies probably to pretty much every platform out there. 68060s, Motorola 68060s are worth their weight in gold now. Well, maybe that's not that much, but they're worth a lot of money. And I just happen to have a handful of these, and that probably would fund my retirement right there.
Actually, I've got like 3.
What's a machine that runs a 68060, Karen?
I have 2 Amiga 4000s that will run the, and matter of fact, 2 people, 2 groups of people are releasing new accelerators now for the Amiga community, and they're based on the 68060. So as much as I would love to sell my Amiga 4000s for $5,000 each, I'm tempted to wait for these new accelerators to come out. Oh,
yeah.
Speaking of the 68,000, our fellow compatriot here, who's labeled as David Lightman in the chat, is doing, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but he's doing some incredible work on the Tandy 6000 and the MMU. You want to talk about that a little bit, Bobby?
Sure. So I really haven't done much. Can you hear me?
You've done a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
all I've really done is soldered some stuff together that Quinn built boards for. Can you see this?
Oh yeah.
So back when Pete put Musi on the Model 2 archive, part of the massive software that was up there was an archive done by Steve Harmon, which had schematics and other information on his device he called the XMMU. And basically what this does is it adds 3 bits, I'm sorry, to Tandy's 8-bit MMU on the stock 6800 board. And it allows it to address up to 7.5 megs of RAM.
Wow.
So after a bunch of trying and getting things sorted out, I was able to actually get this to work. You see in this picture here,
the cat on the board.
Yeah, sorry, say it again.
I just noticed the cat logo on the board.
Yeah. Oh yes, yeah. That's Ken did all of the board. All I did was solder. So of course it sits in place of the processor, and through the cable here, it intercepts all the signals it needs to provide those 3 additional bits of addressing. And I've tested it with up to 3 megs of memory. It certainly works. It was really cool to get to do this again. Tandy had their own 2-bit MMU that it took like 2 years to release. So Steve Harmon, when Steve Harmon decompiled the Xenix 3.2 kernel, figured out how the expanded addressing was handled, and then just created an MMU extension to do it on his own. And he sold these for several years. And then later just gave the code out to anybody who wanted to build one. So I'm not sure when the last time one was built, but we did one a month ago. And
wow.
It's really cool. It's
Don't sell yourself short there, Bobby. You
Absolutely.
did a hell of a lot of testing and debugging, and everyone appreciates what you did.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean,
Definitely.
Anybody can solder. This is all.
No, that's not true.
Anyone can put
I
this
can't.
together. It's real easy. But yeah, I mean, it would be great if other people actually tried it. I attempted to
Would
get
love
it
to.
to work on that 6 megahertz short board, but couldn't make it happen. I've only got it working on the 8 megahertz board. But yeah, I mean, it works, and there's a viable MMU extension for anybody that wants it.
Better than Tandy.
Maybe. I mean, this one was referred to as brutal in design. It tri-states the U11 buffer. But if you go to VC Fed, there's a big write-up on it. Well, there's a little write-up on it that I did. Specifics.
From the end user point of view, 4 meg, 7.5 meg.
Where are you installing the RAM?
Well, the RAM attaches to these 2 headers in the back here. They're separate boards that go into the
Separate
cord cage.
boards for the 6000.
Okay.
The standard 6000 RAM boards, right? You're using.
Yeah, and what would really be nice is if somebody would make a single slot RAM board that did 7.5 meg.
Yeah, somebody.
Somebody.
Anybody.
And then I'll pay to have someone assemble it for me.
I have probably about 3 6000s right now.
Oh, don't say that.
And
Nice.
none of them work. And for the last the VCF that they were going to have up here in Seattle that got canceled because of COVID, I was trying to get one of those to work, and I spent weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and couldn't get a single one to boot Xenix. So that's kind of an ongoing process for me.
You're in Seattle?
I asked to. Yeah, I live in Seattle. I asked to join your group there on Facebook. I found it.
I got you approved.
Because I can't get mine to boot. You can't get yours to assemble, so maybe.
Funny. I just don't know why that happens. I think I do have all the parts. It would just, boy, it would be a Frankenstein assembled.
David, are you in the Tandy Discord?
No idea what that is.
Discord.
All right.
Yeah, you need to be on it.
It's
Okay.
it's an invitation Discord. We have only, it's not meant to keep people, it's just more to keep the spammers out. But I'm
Sure.
going to invite everybody that's on this Zoom to it, because anybody that
Nice.
spends 2.5
So-
hours on the Zoom deserves to be there.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
oddly
we'll help
enough,
you.
I do have an IRC server running. I know Peter said he doesn't do IRC. I have a TRS-80 channel on my IRC server.
So David,
Yes.
I was going to say you and Ken and I all probably should meet up sometime because we're the close people in the Portland Northwest area, or the
Oh, yeah,
PNW
absolutely.
Pacific Northwest area. So I'm in
Okay.
Portland. Ken's up somewhere in Washington. I'll let him.
I'm
Or
in
Lummi
Washington
Island.
as well.
Yeah.
At where?
been
Where did you say?
Lummi
Oh,
Island.
okay, yeah.
And I've been thinking about taking a road trip. I just happen to have a station wagon that will fit a Tandy 6000 in the back of.
Where are you exactly?
I'm in New Mexico, in
Oh,
Socorro.
New Mexico. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, my
that's a
there's minor
drive.
safe said for a little while.
Yeah, I'm only about 3.5 hours from Seattle, so that's not a bad
Wow.
drive.
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
let's connect. Let's connect up afterwards, Dave.
So I posted a link to the Discord. Everybody here can join. Yeah, great community there. People helping people troubleshoot. Ken has been invaluable in the troubleshooting area. Everybody knows Ken's background experience with Sandy. So
Ken dude is everywhere. I mean, you post something about the signals and he just poof, he's there.
Because I don't have a life.
speaking of a life, so we're at 2.5 hours. So I think maybe we'll wrap things up here. And maybe enjoy our Saturday nights, at least here on the East Coast, and everybody else. So thank you all for joining. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Pete.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. That was fun.
All right, folks.
All right, thanks, Pete.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.